When I called my parents to tell them that my husband and 8-year-old daughter had just died in a car accident, they told me they were too busy at my sister's birthday party to talk. 3 days later, they showed up at my door, not to comfort me, but to discuss my inheritance. My best friend handed them an envelope at the door and said, "That's what you came for, right?" When they opened it, their hands started shaking, and they realized they had just lost everything. But before I continue with what was in that envelope and how I got my revenge, I'd like to know where you're chatting from. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell and come along with me as I share my story. Then you can tell me what you think in the comments below. My name is Claire, and this is the story of how I finally stood up to the family that had been using me my entire life. Growing up, I was always the responsible one, the one who had to earn love through performance and perfection. While my younger sister Sarah was the golden child who could do no wrong, I was the one who had to prove my worth constantly. When Sarah broke something, it was an accident. When I broke something, it was carelessness. When Sarah got bad grades, she needed extra support. When I got bad grades, I wasn't trying hard enough. My parents' love always felt conditional, like something I had to purchase with good behavior, achievements, and later, actual money. Sarah was loved simply for existing. I was loved for what I could provide. This pattern followed me into adulthood, and it only got worse when I married David and we had our beautiful daughter, Emma, 6 years before the accident. "Claire, honey, could you help us out with the mortgage this month?" Dad's voice was casual over the phone, like he was asking me to pick up milk from the store. Business has been slow, and we're a little short. I looked at David, who was feeding 18-month-old Emma in her high chair. He raised his eyebrows and shrugged. He'd learned to stay out of my family's financial drama, though I could see the frustration building in his eyes every time they called. "Dad, this is the 3rd time this year," I said quietly. "We're trying to save for Emma's college fund, and David's been working overtime just to—" "It's only $1,500, Claire. We wouldn't ask if we weren't desperate." Family helps family, right? Family helps family. The phrase that had guilted me into countless loans that were never repaid, countless bailouts that were never acknowledged. The same phrase they'd used when I was 12 and they made me give up my birthday money to help pay for Sarah's school trip. The same phrase they'd used when I was 16 and working part-time to save for college, only to have them borrow my savings for Sarah's car down payment. "Fine, Dad. I'll transfer it tonight." After I hung up, David came over and rubbed my shoulders. "You know they're never going to pay us back, right? Just like all the other times." "I know," I sighed. "But what else can I do? They're my parents." "They're your parents when they need money," David said gently. "But where were they when Emma was born and you had complications? Where were they when you got promoted and wanted to celebrate? They only show up when they want something." He was right, but I wasn't ready to hear it yet. I was still that little girl trying to earn love through sacrifice. That $1,500 became $3,000 by Christmas when Mom needed help with Sarah's wedding expenses. "Sarah's our baby," Mom had said. "We want her day to be perfect. You understand, don't you? You've always been so mature, so responsible." Meanwhile, Emma's first birthday party was celebrated with a homemade cake and decorations from the dollar store because we'd spent our celebration budget keeping my parents afloat. The pattern of favoritism that had defined my childhood became even more obvious once Emma arrived. Watching my parents treat my daughter the way they treated me, like an obligation rather than a joy, was heartbreaking in a way I hadn't expected. "Grandma and Grandpa are here." I called to 3-year-old Emma as my parents walked through our front door, carrying designer shopping bags. Emma ran to them with the pure joy that only small children possess, but their hugs were distracted, perfunctory. Dad immediately started complaining about traffic, while Mom criticized our choice of neighborhood. "This area is going downhill," Mom said, looking around disapprovingly. "You should consider moving somewhere safer, somewhere more like where Sarah lives." Sarah lived in an expensive suburb that she could only afford because her husband had a trust fund. But somehow, in my parents' minds, her affluent lifestyle was a reflection of her superior choices, while our middle-class neighborhood was evidence of our poor judgment. Where are the presents?" Emma asked with innocent excitement, bouncing on her toes. "Oh, sweetheart, we didn't have time to stop," Mom said, not even looking embarrassed. "But look what we brought for your cousins." She opened the bags to reveal expensive toys, video games, and clothes, hundreds of dollars worth of gifts for Sarah's kids, who were spending the weekend with them. "These are for Tommy and Lisa's birthday party next week," she explained, as if Emma should be happy for her cousins. "Isn't this robot amazing? It costs $200. And look at this dress for Lisa. It's designer." Emma's face fell, but she nodded politely. At 3, she was already learning the lesson I'd learned at her age. Other people's happiness was more important than her own disappointment. David and I exchanged glances. This wasn't the first time, and we both knew it wouldn't be the last. The same grandparents who claimed they couldn't afford to buy Emma a birthday gift had just spent more on her cousin's party gifts than we spent on groceries in a month. Later that evening, after Emma was in bed, Dad cornered me in the kitchen. "Claire, we need to talk about Sarah's situation. She and Mike are having trouble with their business loan. The bank is threatening foreclosure." My stomach dropped. Here it comes, I thought, the real reason for the visit. "Dad, we can't keep. It's $25,000. I know it's a lot, but you and David are doing so well. You have this beautiful house, good job, stable income. Sarah has 3 kids to think about." I stared at him. "We have a child to think about, too. And that money you're talking about?" "It's Emma's college fund. The one you just told me we should be contributing more to." "College is years away," Mom chimed in from the doorway, where she'd been obviously eavesdropping. "Sarah needs help now. Besides, Emma's smart. She'll get scholarships." The assumption that my daughter's future was less important than my sister's immediate comfort hit me like a slap. Emma was smart, but so were thousands of other kids competing for those scholarships. And even if she got them, why should she have to? Why should she pay the price for her aunt's poor financial decisions? But I wrote the check anyway, because that's what I always did. Because saying no to my parents felt impossible, like betraying some fundamental law of family loyalty that had been drilled into me since childhood. David was furious when I told him, "Claire, this has to stop. We're not their personal bank account. We have our own family to think about." "I know, but nothing. Emma is our priority, not Sarah's business problems, not your parents' mortgage, not anyone else's financial crisis. Emma." He was right, but I felt trapped. My parents had perfected the art of making their requests seem like emergencies, their needs seem like moral imperatives. Emma's 4th birthday fell on the same weekend as Tommy's soccer tournament. My parents chose the tournament. "We'll make it up to her," Mom promised over the phone. "Tommy's team might go to state. This is really important for his self-esteem. You understand, don't you? Emma's still so young, she won't even remember." But Emma did remember. She spent her birthday looking out the window, asking when Grandma and Grandpa and her cousins were coming. When I finally had to tell her they weren't coming, she asked the question that broke my heart. "Did I do something wrong?" "No, baby," I said, holding her close. "You didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes grown-ups make bad choices." We had a wonderful party anyway, with David's parents, who drove 4 hours to be there, Maya and her kids, and several of Emma's preschool friends. But I caught Emma looking out the window several times, still hoping. 2 weeks later, my parents showed up with a cheap plastic toy that was clearly an afterthought purchase. "Sorry we missed the big day, Emma Bean," Dad said, using the nickname that sounded forced coming from him. "But look what we brought you." Emma thanked them politely, but I saw how she looked at the toy, the same look she'd given the broken doll they'd brought for Christmas, still in its torn packaging because they'd grabbed it from a clearance bin. It was the look of a child learning that she wasn't worth much effort. That same day, Mom showed me photos from Tommy's tournament celebration. A fancy dinner, an expensive new bike as a congratulations gift, a weekend trip to an amusement park. "We're so proud of him," she gushed. "He scored 3 goals. He's such a special boy. We took him shopping for new soccer cleats, too. Cost us $300, but he deserved it." "And what about Emma?" I wanted to scream. "What about your other grandchild? What makes her less deserving of your pride, your time, your love?" But I just smiled and nodded, like I always did, like I'd been trained to do since I was Emma's age, at watching my parents lavish attention on Sarah while treating me like a dutiful servant. The requests for money became constant. Car repairs, medical bills, home improvements, vacation funds. There was always something. My parents had learned that I was reliable, that I couldn't say no, that I would always find a way to help, even when it hurt my own family. "You're so generous, Claire," Mom would say after I'd transfer another $1,000 to their account. "Not like some people who forget where they came from. You've always been such a good daughter." The implication was clear. I was the good daughter because I paid their bills. Sarah was the beloved daughter because she was the baby, the one who needed protecting, the one who could do no wrong. But being the good daughter meant being the invisible daughter. It meant my needs didn't matter, my feelings didn't count, my family came second to everyone else's emergencies. David was getting increasingly frustrated. "They're bleeding us dry, Claire. Do you realize we've given them over $50,000 in the last 3 years? 50,000. That's more than we make in a year after taxes." I did realize it, but I felt powerless to stop it. Every time I considered saying no, I heard my mother's voice from my childhood. "Claire, don't be selfish. Family comes first. What would people think if we didn't help each other?" The breaking point should have come when my parents missed Emma's 6th birthday for Sarah's youngest child's preschool graduation. "A graduation is a once-in-a-lifetime event," Mom explained, as if Emma's birthday wasn't also once in a lifetime. "You understand, right? Besides, Emma's getting older. Birthdays aren't as important anymore." By then, Emma had learned to protect herself from disappointment. She didn't even ask if they were coming. When I told her they wouldn't be there, she just nodded and said, "Can Maya's kids come instead?" Maya's children adored Emma, and she adored them. They gave her the cousin experience she should have had with Tommy and Lisa, who barely acknowledged her existence at family gatherings. But the real breaking point came 2 months later, when Dad called with the most outrageous request yet. "Sarah and Mike want to buy a bigger house," he explained, his tone suggesting this was a reasonable emergency. "They need help with the down payment. You know how expensive real estate is these days, and with 3 kids, they really need more space." "How much?" I asked, though I was afraid to hear the answer. $40,000. I nearly dropped the phone. $40,000? Dad, that's more than we make in half a year after taxes. You have equity in your house. You could take out a home equity loan. It's basically free money. You're just borrowing against what you already own. You want us to mortgage our home to buy Sarah a bigger house? It's an investment in family, Claire. Think about it. When we're gone, you girls will have each other. Isn't that worth something? And Sarah's house will increase in value, so it's really just a temporary loan. I looked at Emma, who was doing homework at the kitchen table, her brow furrowed in concentration. My brilliant, overlooked, undervalued daughter who deserved grandparents who loved her unconditionally, who deserved parents who put her security first. "No," I said quietly. What? No, I won't take out a loan against my daughter's security so you can buy Sarah a bigger house. I won't do it anymore. The silence stretched between us. Then Dad's voice turned cold, more disappointed than I'd ever heard him. I'm very disappointed in you, Claire. I thought you understood what family meant. I thought you were better than this. I do understand what family means, I said, surprised by my own steadiness. But apparently we have different definitions. Sarah is going to be very hurt by this. She was counting on you. Sarah is a grown woman with a husband and a job. She can figure out her own housing situation like the rest of us did. Fine, Dad said, his voice ice cold. But don't come crying to us when you need help someday. The threat was clear. Love and support were conditional on financial contributions. If I stopped paying, I stopped mattering. That was the last time they asked me for money. Not because they'd learned to be independent, but because Sarah had married well the second time around, and her new husband could afford their lifestyle. I thought maybe, without the money requests, we could have a real relationship. I thought maybe they'd finally see Emma for the amazing child she was. Smart, funny, kind, creative, everything any grandparent should be proud of. I was wrong. The pattern of favoritism continued. They still missed Emma's important events while never missing Tommy and Lisa's. They still brought her cheap, thoughtless gifts while showering her cousins with expensive presents. They still talked about Sarah's children like they were precious miracles while barely remembering Emma's name half the time. Emma had learned to expect nothing from them, which broke my heart in a way that all their financial demands never had. The day everything changed. David and Emma had been driving back from her soccer practice when the drunk driver ran the red light. The police said they died instantly. A small mercy that felt like no mercy at all. I sat in that hospital corridor, surrounded by the wreckage of my entire world, and reached out to the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. The phone rang 3 times before Mom picked up. I could hear the familiar chaos of a family gathering in the background. Laughter, clinking glasses, my sister's voice singing "Happy Birthday" off-key. "Mom," I whispered, my voice barely holding together. "David and Emma? The car accident, they didn't make it." There was a pause, not the stunned silence I expected when someone receives devastating news, not the gasp of horror or the immediate, "Oh my God, I'm coming right over." It was the irritated pause of someone interrupted during something more important. "Oh, Claire, that's terrible, honey, but I'm really busy right now. It's Sarah's birthday party, and everyone's here. All the kids are having such a good time, and we're just about to do the cake. Can we talk about this tomorrow?" The line went dead. I stared at the phone in my trembling hands, sitting in that sterile hospital corridor where I'd just identified my husband's and 8-year-old daughter's bodies, where I'd signed papers and answered questions about organ donation while my world crumbled into dust. Too busy for my tragedy, too busy for their granddaughter's death. But I shouldn't have been surprised. It had always been this way. Sarah's happiness had always mattered more than my pain. Sarah's celebrations had always taken priority over my emergencies. Sarah's children had always been more important than mine. In that moment, sitting alone with my grief, I finally understood what David had been trying to tell me for years. These people weren't my family. They were strangers who happened to share my DNA, who'd spent my entire life taking from me while giving nothing in return. Real family wouldn't be too busy for my tragedy. Real family would have loved Emma the way she deserved to be loved. Real family wouldn't see dollar signs when they looked at my devastation. They showed up not to comfort me, not to help with funeral arrangements, not to grieve with me. They came with Sarah and her husband, all dressed up like they were attending a business meeting instead of visiting their daughter, who had just lost everything. I watched from my bedroom window as they knocked on my door. I'd been in the same pajamas for 3 days, surviving on the casseroles neighbors had dropped off and the sleeping pills the doctor prescribed. The same neighbors who'd barely known David and Emma had shown more compassion in 3 days than my parents had in a lifetime. My best friend Maya answered the door. She'd been staying with me since the accident, fielding calls and managing the flood of condolences I couldn't handle. She'd taken time off work to sit with me, hold me while I cried, and make sure I ate something every day. "Is Claire here?" Dad asked, adjusting his tie. "We need to discuss some things." "What kind of things?" Maya's voice was sharp. She'd always seen through my family's selfishness better than I had. "Well, with David gone," Sarah started, then caught herself. "We just want to make sure Claire knows she has support. Family support." Maya later told me that Sarah had been looking around the house during this conversation, probably calculating values, the same house they'd wanted me to mortgage for their benefit just 2 years earlier. "We know this is hard," Mom added, "but there are practical matters to consider. Claire shouldn't have to handle everything alone." The concern in her voice might have fooled someone who didn't know her. But I knew her, and I knew this wasn't about helping me handle anything. This was about making sure they got their share of whatever was left. Maya stepped aside to let them in, but I could see the disgust on her face. "Claire's resting," she said, "but she left something for you." She handed Dad a manila envelope. His eyes lit up. He probably thought it was insurance paperwork, maybe even a check. "That's what you came for, right?" Maya said quietly. Dad's hands were steady as he opened it, but as he read the contents, they began to shake. Mom peered over his shoulder, and I watched her face go white. Sarah grabbed the papers from Dad's trembling fingers. Inside that envelope were copies of everything. Every text message they'd sent David over the years complaining about our perfect little family and how we thought we were better than everyone else. Every voicemail they'd left asking for money, including detailed records of every loan they'd never repaid. Screenshots of social media posts showing the expensive gifts they'd bought for Sarah's kids, while Emma got dollar store trinkets. Photos from family gatherings where Emma sat alone while her cousins played with their grandparents. But the centerpiece was a letter I'd written the night before, after 3 days of grief-fueled clarity. "To the people who were supposed to be my family, you were too busy for my tragedy, so please be too busy for my recovery. I know why you're here. You think because David's gone, there might be money coming my way that you can get your hands on. You probably looked up our house value online and calculated the life insurance, just like you've calculated every financial opportunity involving me for the past 35 years. Here's what you don't understand. David was my husband, not yours. I'm his widow and Emma's mother. Every penny goes to me, and I can do whatever I want with it. What I'm doing is keeping my home, the one filled with memories of the husband and daughter you never truly cared about. I'm keeping the life insurance money that will help me rebuild the life you helped make more difficult, with your constant financial demands and emotional neglect. But I am setting up a memorial fund in Emma's name for children who need help. Children whose grandparents might actually love them. For 35 years, you taught me that my worth was measured by what I could give you. Money, sacrifice, silence when you hurt me, excuses when you disappointed my daughter. You took and took and took, while giving Emma the scraps of affection left over from what you showered on Sarah's children. You made my daughter feel like she wasn't worth loving, and I will never forgive you for that. You made her 8th birthday the last one she'd ever have, and you weren't even there, because you were too busy celebrating her aunt's adult birthday party. You taught me what family is supposed to look like, and then you showed me the opposite. Family is supposed to be there for you in the darkest moments. You were too busy at a birthday party to spare 5 minutes for the news that your daughter and granddaughter were dead. Don't contact me again. Don't come to the funeral. Don't drive by my house or ask our mutual acquaintances about me. The next time you want to know how I'm doing, remember that you made your choice when you told me you were too busy for my tragedy. Emma deserved grandparents who loved her. I deserved parents who supported me. We both deserved better than people who saw us as a bank account with a heartbeat. You're not my family anymore. You're strangers who took advantage of my love for 35 years. That ends now. Claire, just so you know, the funeral is Thursday at 2 p.m. Don't come. I've hired security to make sure you don't. I watched Dad's face turn red as he read. Sarah started crying, not from grief, but from rage and embarrassment. Mom just stood there, opening and closing her mouth like a fish. She can't do this. Sarah finally exploded. We're family. We have rights. Maya's laugh was bitter. Rights to what? You have zero legal claim to David's estate? Claire is his widow? She can burn every dollar if she wants to, and there's nothing you can do about it. But hey, I'm sure you'll have a lovely time explaining to everyone why you showed up at your grieving daughter's house 3 days after her husband and child died, asking about money instead of offering comfort. We came to offer support, Mom started. Bullshit. Maya cut her off. You came because you thought there might be something in it for you, just like you always did. Claire's been your personal ATM for years while you treated her daughter like she was invisible. Well, congratulations, now you actually are invisible to her. Dad tried one more time, his voice desperate. Claire's obviously not thinking clearly. She's grieving. She doesn't mean this. She'll change her mind when... When what? Maya stepped closer to him. When she realizes she's alone in the world? She's not alone. She has real friends, real support. She has people who loved David and Emma and who love her. You people aren't those people. You never were. Now you can leave. They left without another word, taking their shaking hands and empty hearts with them. From my bedroom window, I watched them argue in the driveway. Sarah was gesticulating wildly, probably still ranting about rights and fairness. Dad kept shaking his head and Mom looked like she was going to be sick. 6 months later, I signed the papers to set up the Emma Chen Memorial Fund at the local community center. It would help families with children's medical expenses, something modest but meaningful that I could manage alongside keeping my house and rebuilding my life. We've already had 8 families apply for assistance, the coordinator told me, sliding the paperwork across her desk. Your daughter's memory is going to help so many kids. I walked out into the afternoon sunshine and heading back to the home I'd shared with David and Emma. I'd kept their rooms exactly as they were, but I'd also started painting the guest room, my new art studio. Something I'd always wanted to try but never had time for when I was juggling work, family, and my parents' constant needs. My phone buzzed. A text from Maya. Ran into your mom at the grocery store. She tried to talk to me about you, asking if you were ready to reconcile, and claiming the whole thing was a misunderstanding. I told her you were doing great and had never been happier or more at peace. She didn't like that. How are you really doing? I typed back, healing, in my own home, in my own time, with my own money and my own choices. Maya responded immediately. Good. By the way, Sarah's been telling everyone you cut them off over money and that you stole their inheritance. When people find out what really happened, that they showed up 3 days after the accident asking about inheritance instead of offering comfort, the whole family's turning on them. Even your aunt called to say she was disgusted. Karma's working overtime. I smiled for the first time in months, not because I was happy about their social consequences, but because I was finally free from caring about their drama. That evening, I sat in Emma's room, holding one of her favorite stuffed animals and looking through photo albums. The grief was still there. It always would be. But it no longer shared space with the poison of people who'd valued money over supporting me in my darkest hour. Emma's piggy bank sat on her dresser, still full of the quarters she'd saved for a bike she'd never get to buy. David's coffee mug was still in the kitchen sink where he'd left it that last morning, because I wasn't ready to wash it yet. The house was quiet, but it wasn't empty. It was full of real memories, real love, real family moments that no one could take from me. The inheritance they'd wanted so badly was mine to keep, mine to grieve with, mine to use as I slowly rebuilt a life without the two people who'd meant everything to me. I'd kept what mattered, my home, my memories, my dignity, and finally, my peace. I'd lost what had never really mattered, family members who saw dollar signs where there should have been love, who treated my daughter like she was invisible, who were too busy for my tragedy but had plenty of time for my money. Sometimes the best revenge isn't elaborate or dramatic. Sometimes it's just refusing to let the people who hurt you take anything else from you. Not your money, not your energy, not your peace, and definitely not your precious memories. They'd taught me what family wasn't supposed to look like. David and Emma had shown me what family was supposed to look like. And now, finally, I was free to honor their memory without the weight of people who'd never deserved my love in the first place. What do you think? Was I right to cut them off completely, or should I have given them another chance? Let me know in the comments below. Please don't forget to subscribe so that you don't miss any update from my revenge.